Afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name's K Rain. Welcome to You Have Me Beat. So today we have a different kind of video. So I already have a beat here for you guys. It's an instrumental I made like end of 2023. Um, so I'm kind of making fun of myself in the title. I titled this video "Not Another Deftones Beat." But pretty much I feel like this doesn't really sound like a Deftones beat, but that's kind of what I had in mind when I was trying to make it. And then, when you go on YouTube, I feel like there's so many Deftones type beats, you know what I mean? But I feel like this one, I don't know, it hits different. It doesn't sound like the others, you know what I mean? Um, looking back at it in retrospect, I feel like it sounds more like Weezer or like which are both bands that the lead singer Chino Moreno is a big fan of. So I feel like it kind of works out. Um, yeah, but it's a weird kind of beat because at the time I didn't really have access to a physical electric guitar, but I had a bass guitar. Um, so what I did was I pretty much modeled my bass guitar after some electric guitars. And this is why the beat sounds so like trippy, you know what I mean? It feels like there's something missing, but it's like it's still pretty whole at the same time. So I'm gonna play a bit of it, then I'm gonna talk about it a bit more, then I'm gonna play some other parts of the song, and then we're gonna talk about why I like it so much, and I guess a specific part of it that makes it what it is, right? So we're not gonna go from the very beginning. We're just gonna start from where the drums start. Oh yeah, and sorry for the glitching. I feel like there's just a lot of audio tracks in this mix, so sometimes FL Studio just doesn't like that. But yeah, that's the beat so far. I mean, at least as much as I wanted to play. Um, but yeah, pretty much it's really stripped back. You know, if you have a good ear, you probably know like which Deftones song or songs I'm pulling from. But like, yeah, I wanted to make something kind of woozy sounding, but not too metallic. You know what I mean? Again, I only had a bass guitar, so I was just trying my best to, you know, make use of what I had. Um, yeah. But for me, the main thing that I really wanted to talk about is the snare. I feel like the snare is really what stands out to me. Maybe not to you, but to me. And I feel like it kind of makes the beat. But at the same time, it's kind of an error. It's not perfect. The way I designed it, um, yeah, it's kind of rough, but it's hitting really nice, right? So I'm not gonna show you the whole mix. I just want to touch on this thing called transient processor, right? So that was kind of like the last piece of the puzzle that kind of made the snare like hit like that, right? So I'm gonna play it again, not from the very beginning, just kind of at the hook. Yeah. So I know it's really high up in the mix. I just kind of left it like that. Whatever, I was just really excited with the tone I was able to achieve. But transient processor is pretty much, you know, the missing piece of the puzzle, like I already said, right? And pretty much like a transient in music, it's like it's the hits of like a drum or a snare, right? That kind of comes out in the mix. And what this does, it's a gain tool, right? It's very similar to a compressor, but transient doesn't really have like a noise ceiling, right? So there's no real limits, right? Which is why it can get a little crazy. And that's kind of why I liked it so much, you know. I don't really use it often, but for this beat, I don't know. It just happened to work. I'm kind of breaking some rules, I guess my rules in a way, but I don't know, it just worked, right? Yeah. So if you've never seen this before, so pretty much the attack deals more of like speed, like how fast, the impact takes place, how fast the plugin literally, does its magic. And then the release is kind of like the weight, how much of it do you want it to take effect, pretty much, right? I feel like everything else is pretty straightforward. The drive, it's just like to the max. Um, Split frequency, it's pretty straightforward. It's kind of just, you know, splitting things in half essentially, and then the gain, you know what that does. Um, these, it's kind of like showing you like the shape in which, you know, the impact is happening, right? It's showing you exactly what it's doing to the transient, right? The waveform. It's kind of like suppressing suppressing it a little bit, right? So that's pretty much what's going on in the snare for the transient processor. Again, sorry for the glitching. There's just a lot of waves in here. glitching's pretty bad. Again, I'm sorry. But yeah, you get the idea, right? The snare, for me, it pretty much makes or breaks this beat. Um, you're either gonna love it or hate it. For me, the beat alone, I can't tell you that it's great, but what I can say is that I did a good job in creating the atmosphere, right? It's really the atmosphere that I'm proud of. And I feel like a lot of early Deftones music, it's the atmosphere that people fall in love with, you know what I mean? Um, what I was able to achieve with the bass guitar alone, that's pretty cool too, right? Um, but yeah, it's really the atmosphere. And then over here, I kind of switched up the drums a little bit. Yeah, you get the idea. So glitchy, I'm sorry. But yeah, that's pretty much the beat, right? Um, if you're seeing this now, I guess let me know if it sounds like Deftones to you. If it doesn't sound like Deftones to you, let me know like who it sounds like, what it sounds like. Um, yeah, to me, it kind of sounds like I already said. It sounds like Weezer or like Hum, right? Those are both bands that are just kind of alternative rock, but they have, well, Hum definitely has a lot of heaviness to them. Weezer, I don't know. I feel like early Weezer is kind of like almost emo adjacent, but not really. You know what I mean? But they're all alternative rock. And if you're really deep into the Deftones fandom, like you might know the band Far too. Far, they definitely have like a hardcore influence, but they're still alternative rock at the end of the day. But they've dabbled in like hardcore, post-hardcore, all the above. But yeah, Far, it could also sound like that too, right? But yeah, that was the main thing I really wanted to talk about because that's pretty much what made the beat for me, the transient processor on the live snare. Um, yeah, it's not something I really use, at least not anymore, but I feel like, you know, in the right soundscape, I guess I could say, it works, right? The live snare sound, it just hits different. So what I'm gonna do again, I'm just gonna like mute out all the melodic sounds so you could just hear the drum track alone. Hopefully it doesn't glitch on me this time. Like that's clean. Like that's hella clean. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. All Alright, so I'm gonna do the exact same thing. I'm gonna play it back, except I'm gonna mute the transient processor. You can see how different it sounds. See, right away you can tell like it's missing some depth, right? It's pretty hollowed out. Um, it doesn't sound terrible, but it doesn't sound great, right? The transient gives it some oomph, yeah. It gives it, yeah, some kick. You know what I mean? Some punch. Now the transient's back on. It also tightened it up a little bit. You know, it's a little more, yeah. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I kind of wanted to touch on. Yeah, so back to the snare, right? So I guess after I uploaded the track, I mean, I was kind of like dabbling, you know, with the compressor, because there's a lot more stuff on the mix. But because I was able to achieve what I achieved with the transient processor, I felt like, you know, maybe I should just leave the compressor out. Um, but like looking back in retrospect, I feel like the compressor could have been nice, cuz you know, the snare, like, it is a little bit loud, but I don't know, I felt like I kind of liked the rawness that it brought, you know, to the rest of the track. But definitely, you know, if I was to make something like this again, no question, I would also include a compressor just to make sure there's a little bit of control, you know what I mean? Um, but that's the only other thing I would change as far as the snare goes, right? But the way it's hitting right now, definitely, you know, because I was trying to get that like 90s, um, I hate the phrase new metal, but I was trying to go for that new metal snare sound, right? And I feel like I was pretty close. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of, you know, keep that raw edge, right? So, yeah. Sounds pretty legit to me. Um, okay, enough of that. Let's talk a little bit more about the atmosphere, you know, as far as melodics go. Um, we don't have to talk about it too much because, you know, initially what I was thinking about this video, I was thinking, you know, maybe we could, maybe this could be a video where I rework the beat entirely, you know, with my knowledge of electric guitar now, but I felt like that's not really fun, you know. I wanted to actually teach something, right? Um, and also, in a weird way, I feel like this beat, artistically, it's kind of like doing something different. I mean, like, if you've heard this before, like, you probably wouldn't have even known that all I had was a bass guitar, but now that you know, it probably gives you like a whole different perspective, right? So the fact that I was able to achieve what I achieved, it kind of gives it its own little kind of lo-fi edge, you know, and I feel like in its own regard, it's really cool. So I just felt like adding like real electric guitars with my knowledge that I know now, it's not gonna hit the same. And the sounds are still real. These are all like bass guitars in different plugins and amps and etc. It's just yeah. So let's dive into that a little bit, okay? So I'm gonna mute all of the drum sounds and we're just gonna focus on the atmosphere, air quotes. See now that definitely sounds like Weezer or like some 90s, like late 90s like emo, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's pretty cool. But I would say the main part where you really get a real feel for the atmosphere is when I switch up the drums, which is essentially the bridge, right? This section. Of course, it wants to glitch out now. The best part. And let's move the drums back. Again, sorry for the glitching. Yeah, but that's pretty much wrapping up this video. If you felt like you learned something, or you just, like the vibes, you know, give this a like, subscribe. You can also, follow me on my main channel, K Rain Sound. I have a new Instagram for this channel, just at you have me beat, and you can also follow my main Instagram too. Yeah, and if you're interested in, you know, getting some lessons, like some music production lessons, just send me an email, krainsound@outlook.com, and we can really get into the nitty gritty. Um, Over here, I'm just kind of showing little tidbits, little things you can take, you know, and improve on, or things, deconstructing things, making things better, etc. Again, I feel like with this beat, it stands on its own, right? But I feel like if I were to just, do it again, I just feel like that would just kind of take away from the video. Like I'm just trying to teach, share some knowledge. Yeah. But again, I feel like for y'all hearing what you heard, maybe it'll inspire you to make something better, you know what I mean? Or just kind of like tap into like this vein of music if you're not really familiar with more alternative music. Maybe it'll just kind of like pique your interest and be like, yo, this shit crazy. I want to try something new. So that's what I'm here for essentially, right? Um, but yeah, thanks for tuning in. We're gonna do so much more. Um, but yeah, that's it for today. Thank you.